Hello everyone, I'm Noesis, and this is my first video. And in this video, I'm going to show you how my worst game turned into my best game. Like it is, it is still kind of bad. Like it isn't actually my best game, but you know, it turned into like a nice game. So I just wanted to share with you, okay? And for context, I am a 1300 rated player on chess.com, and my opponent here is rated 1600 on chess.com. We play this on chess.com if you didn't actually figure that out. And you know, I just played with the black pieces because this game starts with my opponent playing d4. And since I'm an e4 player exclusively, I didn't actually study anything, so I just played like simple moves like d4, d5. Like nothing can go wrong with this. And my opponent played c4, which is the queen's gambit, and I just knew the Slav defense and not even that much theory. Just knew the first move and just develop pieces. That's literally it. That's the literal game. And I played c6. My opponent played knight f3, and I played knight f6. And my opponent played knight c3, and I played bishop to f5. And my opponent, could have played queen b3, queen b6. Takes is fine. Or if takes, I have takes, and knight takes is fine. And it is very decent position. Like I'm not that much worse here. Like if anyone can win this, like nobody can win it with the 0.5 advantage. And so I just I thought my phone would play this, but he didn't. So and instead play like bishop to g5, which is not who I expected. And my plan on developing the bishop to f5 is to play e6 and develop my bishop to d6. So I played e6, just continuing with the plan, nothing much. And my opponent played e3 as well. And I just didn't like the pin because he can very much like make like some moves and maybe win my bishop, or no, like maybe win my knight, or win a pawn or something, because this pin, like I didn't want that. So I just played like h6, and my opponent played bishop to h4. I thought he would take, but I think they realized that queen takes is just a decent developing move, and you're just wasting a tempo, which you shouldn't do with white. And I just played g5, which isn't actually a very good move in my opinion. Like it is a terrible move, but my logic behind it was, I am going to get the bishop here. So I thought, bishop here must mean like I am probably better, or like it is kind of even, and maybe I get an edge in the endgame. So I just he played bishop g3, and I played knight to h5. My opponent played bishop to bishop to e5, and I played f6, which is apparently an inaccuracy, but practically it doesn't really matter. And the computer suggests to take here, and argue that this overextension could possibly mean that my king isn't actually safe. Well, I don't think my opponent is gonna play that. So if he did, then this game wouldn't be in the video, okay? So I played, he played bishop g3, and I take back, and he also takes back. So I played knight, queen c7 just anticipating the move queen to b3. Queen b3 just looks kind of scary because it attacks your pawn. Like, let's say if I just played like knight d7 after queen b3, like I have to play this, and we will transpose into the same position. Like, but yeah, that's the thing. I just played it in a weird move order, and my opponent played bishop to d3, which is not a move I expected, but it is a decent move. So I just traded here and played knight d7. And this is apparently a mistake because I know why. Because rook c8, rook c1. Actually, c takes d5 was better, but my opponent played rook c1. I just castle, long castle, and my opponent, short castle. So this is an opposite side castling position. So either you win or I win. Like there is no draw in, there's no in between, because you know one one side is gonna attack on the king side, me, and my opponent is gonna attack on the queen side. Okay, like this is gonna be like a very interesting battle, and I just like this sort of um like uh like what else do you call it? Like imbalance, yeah, imbalanced position. And I play king to b8, which is a mistake. Generally, what you would want to do is actually defend the pawn. This pawn doesn't have enough protection. And since the rook is on c1, this pawn is actually not a protection to that d5 pawn. So, my opponent just trades here, and I take with the e pawn, and my opponent just takes with the knight. And I'm down a pawn. Like, I thought I was genuinely losing. It is losing, but I thought of resigning the game, but just didn't choose to do it because what if my opponent blunders? So I played like queen d6, and my opponent played knight c3. I play h5. H5 is just I just want to get you know an attack going because I'm down a pawn. And if I don't, like, if I take it to an end game, I would most certainly lose, okay? Like, you have to realize I'm down material. So I have to create counterplay somehow to at least equalize or even technically win. So, I played h5 and my opponent played a4, which is actually a mistake because it doesn't really stop my h4 advance, but technically it doesn't stop knight to e5, which is I thought of this move, but didn't think it was a good enough move. Like I just didn't care. Okay, and my opponent takes and I take back, which is actually like a bad move. The computer wanted to play g4, knight d2, and then take threatening mate, play g3, uh, then I don't know. This position, isn't that great for me because it is. I'm still down a pawn, and I have to move my rook somehow. Let's say to, you know, let's say to h5. It is kind of losing, so I just don't do it, and I take, and my opponent played a5, which isn't actually which is just a decent move, and I play h6, I mean a6 to stop this. Let's say if I play h3 right now, after g takes h3, like after a6, it just seems like unpleasant. Like I think in this position, like h takes g2 is good after takes, and maybe like check. No, That's a ridiculous move. Okay. You know, after like queen to e6, like that's a ridiculous move. Like, ain't no way I find that. Okay. And my opponent played knight e4, and I played queen e6. Just preparing h3 and stepping away from the attack of the knight. And my opponent played b4. And if any of you are wondering, yes, that's a free pawn. But the computer wants knight to e5. No, actually rook to g8. Or bishop takes b4. Like, all three of these moves are good. Like, I have a strong pawn on h4. So, and I'm no longer down a pawn. So that must mean something. Okay? Like, so, and I didn't actually play that. And I play, h3, which is the best move. And my opponent played g3. And, I anticipated for my opponent to play g3. And I prepared, like, queen f5. With this knight can't move. This knight is under attack. Like, I didn't think a way that my opponent could defend himself. Like, apparently, like, uh, you know, what else is winning here? Like, you have to defend the pawn. Like knight f to d2 is apparently the winning move, and it isn't even actually winning, but just drawn. Okay, and my opponent played knight to h4. Can you see what's the problem with this? It actually requires, like, a sacrifice, but it technically isn't a sacrifice because if my opponent takes, he's gonna be checkmated, and I found the sacrifice within like 10 seconds, and I take the knight with my rook. Rook takes h4, which is a brilliant move because if my opponent takes, I play queen to f3, and my opponent gets checkmated no matter what. Like, no move saves him. And if he doesn't, then he just lost a knight, and possibly even a pawn. Like, the best move in this position is to play f3, queen g5, queen g6, king f2. Probably like rook h7, rook h1, and this would just go on. But my opponent is down, a bishop. Like, this is just totally losing. So my opponent just took the pawn. Being 1600 and just took my and I took my rook. I played queen to f3, which is the move I showed, and my opponent just resigned because there's nothing he can do to stop the checkmate. Like, he can try, but this is just bad. And even taking the queen isn't actually that bad of a move. I'm still completely winning. I'm up a queen in this position. So my opponent just resigned. So I get a good win against a high rated player who is higher rated than me, like 300 points over. So, it was a nice game, and just decided to share with you. And if you like this video, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. This is a new channel, and I will it will really mean a lot to me with your support. And thank you for watching. Thank you.